guys, welcome to Nightingale Reviews. My name's Bailey, the Banished Bibliophile, and today I want to start my first vlog. I don't know what it is about reading vlogs, but they are one of my favorite types of videos to consume via BookTube. I think there's something so fascinating to me about getting to see the actual reading journey rather than just seeing it in a wrap-up, and I love getting to see more about the booktubers' lives. I don't know what it is, it just brings me joy. I just want to start that. Essentially, during the school year, I completely stopped reading. Usually during the school year, I can get in a few extra little things to read. I may not be as much as I read in the summer, but it's certainly enough that I feel like I've accomplished something, and unfortunately this semester I've read one book. And that was a reread of the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book by Jeff Kinney, so take that as you will. The reason I haven't been reading a lot is just because I've been so busy and just because of stress. Once school hit, everything just kind of amped up. Every single time I go to pick up a book, I just feel so guilty. Like I should instead be studying, I should instead be doing homework, and I just don't feel comfortable reading a book because I feel like I should be doing something else, and so instead I either go back to homework or I watch Netflix. I don't know why. I feel more guilty about reading a book than watching Netflix, but like I do, and that's it's weird. Also, I think I haven't been reading a lot because of my world literature course, so I'm reading a lot of text for that, and therefore just because I'm not enjoying it as much, I'm not exactly as intrigued to read novels that I have in my possession or that I've borrowed from the library. I have honestly picked up so many books since school started in August. For example, I picked up Vox, and I am to review that, and I literally got 94% of the way through, and then I stopped reading it just because everything just became too much. Now, looking back on it now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how ridiculous, Bailey. But I think it's kind of a good thing because at the same time, it's a book I really want to talk about, and I think that a vlog would be a really great way to do that. So I'm definitely going to start it back at the beginning as soon as the semester ends in 2 weeks, and I just want to sit down with you guys and I want to talk about it as I read it because I have lots of thoughts on it. So I'm excited to get to that, and I also picked up The House by the Cemetery by John Everson, which is a horror book about a witch's house that is going to be renovated for Halloween to be a haunted house, and the man who is charged with its renovation has all these spooky things happen to him. Started reading in October, and just everything kind of fell apart in October, so I just put it down and I haven't picked up a book since, besides Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I decided to pick that one up because I read it back in like 6th grade, and it just brought me this joy, and I just wanted to get like a little piece of that back and see if I could do that via a book. And unfortunately, Diary of a Wimpy Kid was more frustrating than it was nostalgic, because I realized very quickly that the main character is not the type of person I would want to be friends with in middle school. They're the person I would rather have avoided. The main character, he constantly does things that are so questionable and blames things on other people. Recently, I picked up Bob by Wendy Mass and Rebecca Stead, or Steed, or something like that. Bob follows our main character, Livy, whose grandmother lives in Australia, and when Livy was 5 years old, her and her mother went to go visit the grandmother, but they haven't been back since. They only contact each other via the phone, and it's quite frequent that they do this. Now, Livy is 10 years old, and her mother has had another child, but the grandmother hasn't gotten to see her in person, and as a result, Livy's mother wants to go to Australia and take both Livy with her and the new child, while the father stays at home. So that's what they do. They pack up their bags, but Livy doesn't really recall anything that happened during her initial visit, so she's very hesitant about it. And she gets to the grandmother's house. She goes up to the room she previously stayed at, and inside the closet is this green figure in a chicken suit. Turns out this creature's name is Bob, and Bob tells her that he has been waiting for her in his closet for 5 years, when she said that she'd come back for him, and she never did. Livy has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. She's completely thrown off by whatever this thing is, and she doesn't remember ever encountering him, ever promising him anything. So far, I am 102 pages into it, so I'm just over the halfway mark. This is like an exactly 200-page middle grade novel, and thus far, I'm pretty much enjoying it. I'm glad I picked this one up because it's very short. I don't know if I'm going to finish it before exams, or probably more likely after exams, but I'm still really motivated to read it, so maybe I'll get it done before. Let's hope. I think it's such a really cute story thus far. It's very much a mystery, but also a friendship story. And what I'm really enjoying about it so far is, even though this has slightly simpler writing, I don't think it compromises the plot. I don't think it compromises the two authors' storytelling ability. I'm still very much invested. It's not the most engaging middle grade I've ever read, but it's definitely not the worst. What's cool about this one is it's told from dual perspectives, from Livy's perspective and Bob's perspective, and I personally like Bob's perspective. I think he's a lot more funny, and I'm just excited to see what the heck happened, because as Livy's understanding everything, so is the reader, and so you get to discover things together and uncover what's happening at the same time, and I really like that. So yeah, that's all I really have for this update. It's probably not going to be updated much until after exams. I only have a quiz, 2 huge papers, 5 exams, and a discussion board to do, and then I'm completed my first semester of sophomore year. I'm really excited. I personally am an LIS major, so I'm majoring in library and information science, so I can be a librarian. Really kind of had no idea what I wanted to do in high school that was realistic, if you will, until I fell in love with the library scene. I have no idea where my library degree will take me, or what department I want to be a part of, or what my position will ever be, but I'm excited, and I'm just one more step closer. So today's Black Friday, and Book Outlet, of course, has their huge sale, so I'm trying to figure out what to get, but there's just so many things. What?
So I found the Great Hunt, okay?
Uh-huh.
But I can either spend $1.53 or $2.23. So it's a bargain paperback copy or a regular paperback copy. I really want to save the dollar.
Save that dollar, yo!
I kind of want to just buy Original Sin to make fun of it.
A Christian. So I don't know how this angle's working, and I know it's on a tilt, and I don't know how to fix that, and oh, this is a mess, but we're gonna power it through, and we're gonna keep creating anyway. So here we go. I have news. I finished Bob. It was very exciting to have accomplished that. I haven't finished a book in so long, as I previously said. I finished this about 2 in the morning, 2 days ago, so I'm a little late to explaining my thoughts, but here we are. Goodness. This is kind of a bit difficult for me to rate. I don't know. I'm kind of swinging back and forth between a 3.25 and a 3.5. I always find it a bit difficult to rate middle grade books because it's for a completely different demographic. So I don't want to say that it isn't good just because it didn't hold my attention as much as a YA or adult novel. I don't think that's its fault because I'm obviously not its main audience. But at the same time, that kind of ekes into my experience as well. But there are those middle grade books I find that can be so enjoyable still as a 20-year-old, and this just unfortunately wasn't that one. It was good, don't get me wrong. It was one of those books that's kind of in the middle of the path, where you've read a lot worse, but you've read better, if that makes any sense. And I feel terrible for saying that because it's middle grade, and I feel like I'm like shaming it for no good reason. But yeah, it was a really sweet, cute friendship story set in another country, another continent, which I thought was really fascinating. And it just has this really homey vibe to it that I really appreciated. And I think a lot of that is lent partially to the illustrations. There are some random ones mixed in. Just these very earthy tones, and it just felt very homey, very organic, just very warm feeling, if you will. And that really, I think, made this a really interesting reading experience, just because that, for some reason, that coloration in those pictures added so much for me. It was what I needed in the moment. I wanted something quick, I wanted something sweet, and I wanted something just that wouldn't be too thick, too dense to get through, both page-wise and mentally-wise. This is exactly what I wanted, but at the same time, I just wish that I was more engaged. I do have to say that Bob was still definitely my favorite perspective by the end, and what he was, I was hoping it'd be more exotic. I don't know. I think it has a really cool fairy tale-esque quality to the book, but I was hoping for something weirder. This is a book that I would definitely recommend people who are avid middle grade readers, but I'm not sure if I would just recommend this to like someone random on the streets to get them to start reading. But I think it is definitely really great. I do recommend it if you're interested. I just don't think it's something I'm going to immediately revisit anytime soon, but it is worthwhile. There we go. After finishing that, I immediately decided to pick up Bruja Born, and I don't want to say the author's name because I'm going to butcher it, and it's such a beautiful name, and I don't want to taint that with my mispronunciation. I can't even speak English properly. This is the second book in the Bruja series. I'm not exactly sure what its official title is, but there I think are going to be definitely 3 books for sure. This is the second. They can be read as companions. So the first one is Labyrinth Lost, and essentially these follow 3 sisters who are Brujas. Brujas are witches, and these ones happen to be set in Brooklyn. The 3 sisters, we have Alex. No, we're just gonna start with the oldest. Why would I start with the middle child? I'm just obviously a mess. We have Lula, who is the oldest, and she is a healer, and that's who this book is about. And the middle sister is Alex, and she's an incantrix. So basically she's one of the most powerful witches out there. And then we have the youngest sister, Rose, who's 14, and she is a seer. She can tell people's future, and she can talk to the dead. My sisters really love this author. They read her Vicious Deep series, which is about a teen male mermaid. So for some gosh awful reason, I couldn't remember that basically a male mermaid is a merman. So there we go, folks. Wow, really brain farted right there. And I don't think they knew that this series was coming out, so I was the first one to get to it. I've never read Vicious Deep, but I knew they were obsessed with it. They loved the main character Tristan, and then I saw this new series that she had out, and so I was the first one to read it, which was really exciting. And they decided to read it, and we all kind of came to the consensus that it was a 3.5 star book maybe. I think it had really great nuance and really wonderful world building, that it was extremely engrossing. But at the same time, I think that it was just kind of hard to get into the characters. I didn't really feel a connection to any of them. I think it kind of lacked a slight emotional depth. At the same time, it was really enjoyable, and I couldn't really put my finger on maybe what might have detracted from my love of the first book. And then someone put it in a review, and I'm like, I think that's what it was. And it was that even though the first book was like a high stakes book in which the main character in it was Alex, and her entire family got sent to Los Lagos, and she had to save them from the evil clutches of this devourer. But at the same time, as she was trying to go through the world and save them, it never felt like there was any true danger. And I think that really kind of hit the problem on the nose, if you will. And I realized that while I loved the adventure and I loved the setting and the atmosphere, I just never felt like there was anything that could happen to the characters, because the end game had to be, I knew there was going to be a sequel, and I knew that it was most likely that all 3 were going to be in it. So I just never felt that dire straits throughout the entire book that you'd think might be associated with it. But at the same time, I love the cultural aspects of the Brujas. It's so fantastic, and I knew no matter what I wanted to pick up in the second book. And then my sisters literally all read the second book before me, so I'm like, I read the first one before everyone, and now here I am reading the second one last. But that's okay. I realize now all you see is the bottom half of these people, so it's probably awkward, and I apologize. It's supposed to be the people from Yuri on Ice, so hopefully this is less weird now staring at it. Okay, this one we follow Lula, the oldest daughter, the healer, and she just hasn't been having the best of times recently. She's been struggling a lot since coming back from Los Lagos. She feels like she can't really talk to her family like she used to, and so she really confides in her boyfriend, but she's been distant from him since all this happened. Then a really troubling event occurs, and the bus they're all on to go to a game crashes, and her boyfriend is on the brink of death, and so she has to make a decision to save him or not, and it's her deepest desire to go and keep him alive. In order to do this, she has to defy those in charge of the Brujas, and at the same time, if she does bring him back, then that means she's defying the will of the gods, of the Dios, and that is just even more trouble, which will then open her up to all this controversy. She might be hunted then, but she's still willing to go through all of this in order to save the person that she really loves. I am currently on page 82. I think I'm enjoying it more than the first book. What I found in the first book is that the beginning was my favorite part, and so far this is really good. My sisters all agreed that this one was better than the first, so I'm really excited. I love the sisters. I loved their bond with each other. Honestly, Alex wasn't my favorite character, and neither was Lula in the first one. Like I said, I never could really connect with either of the sisters, but I think I'm really liking Lula more that I'm reading from her perspective, and I'm actually liking Alex more now that she's a secondary character, which I find really odd. I've never liked someone more when they weren't the main perspective, but that is the case with Alex. My hopes for this book is that there's going to be more Nova. Nova was a main player in the first book, and he is a Brujo whose magic will eventually be his demise, and he was my absolute favorite character, and I think he deserves so much love. Everyone kind of shuns him now, and it's for good reason. But I still love him. I think that the author was really good at crafting his backstory, his personality, his troubles, so I'm really excited. My sister said he shows up in this, and I'm like, I hope it's like a significant portion of it, but I have this terrible feeling it's not. We're gonna hope for the best. I didn't realize how little of the books he was saying, and like, wow, I'm just like a terrible booktuber, but we're fixing it. Definitely plan on reading a lot more Bruja Born. Every single time there's an end to a semester or something like that, I either have one of two reactions. I freak out and feel guilty about reading and I just can't focus on reading, or I immerse myself in reading and be like, oh, studying? What's that? This book is way more important. Lastly, I wanted to show you a couple books I recently got from a friend of mine, Katie. We talk a lot over FaceTime, but we never really get to meet up anymore, and she sent me a surprise package of little things, and I just wanted to say thank you to her and just show you what I got. This is so sweet of her, and this is very exciting. So she got me the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie, and I know a lot of people didn't like it and it was a flop, but honestly, anything to do with the Avatar: The Last Airbender world, I definitely want to collect and I want to get. So she ended up getting me 2 books, and she made me some bookmarks, which I think are so cool. They have my initials on it, and they're so aesthetically pleasing and just love it. She ended up getting me 2 books, 1,000 Sleepless Nights by Michael King and 2 stories of holiday romance, one being Mistletoe and Mr. Right, and the other one being Sleigh Bells and Second Chances by Lila Payne. These books I've never heard of, but I'm really excited to read them, especially because I really actually want to read Christmas-oriented stories. First one focuses on Jessica, who's going to Ireland with her boyfriend for the holidays. And she thinks it's just going to be this great trip, it's going to be extremely romantic, but then it turns out that the only person who really kind of makes the trip worthwhile is a local farmhand. So I wonder if he's going to become the new love interest. The second novella, Sleigh Bells and Second Chances, we focus on Christina, who doesn't want to be away at Christmas, but it's her job to babysit one of London's hottest bands. Even though she had a fling with the band's lead singer Carrie, that never officially ended. Maybe London is exactly where she's supposed to be to get the perfect New Year's kiss if Carrie can find a way to prove himself before the clock strikes 12. I'm more excited for the second novella, but I think they're both going to be really great. And lastly, the 1,000 Sleepless Nights book. Sounds like it's going to be a lot more heavy-oriented topics, but essentially it follows a family who is torn apart by neglect and hurt and brought together again by a most unlikely force. This girl whose father owned a really big ranch, she fell in love with a ranch hand and she decided to marry him, and her father just was not having it. So then her father dies, and so she has to do everything within her power to save the ranch, even if that means sort of tearing her family apart and not always being there for them when she should be as a mother and as a wife. And so once their 3 children grow up, they don't really want anything to do with their mom, but then they find out that she has cancer. They have to figure out, can they be a family again and just enjoy the time they still have left. So this one definitely sounds like it's going to be a lot more heavier, a lot more sadder, and she's probably gonna die at the end. But you know, we take the punches and we roll. Even if it tears out your heart. It'll probably be a while until I update you again, just because of exams and studying and final papers. But I'm hoping that it won't be too long. And I'll see you soon. It's been a really long time since I updated you guys, and I thought it would just be really fun to wrap some gifts and talk to you about what's been happening in my life and to discuss books. I am now done with exams, which is just so exciting, and it's such a relief, especially considering, as many people I'm sure can attest, that exams are just stressful as all heck. And then exam week was just made worse by me being sick, so I'll just set up the scene really quickly. I work at a library, and the first Saturday in December was when we were planning to decorate for Christmas up in the youth services department. But also that day we were closing early because the town was having a parade in honor of Christmas. And it turns out that the previous one for Halloween had gotten canceled due to rain. So they really wanted people to be able to be in this one and to participate and to have a turnout. So the library was meant to participate. And I think that they usually do this by like a volunteer basis where staff can sign up. But this time they really wanted a lot of people. So they just said that, you know, all staff personnel are to be there, which is totally fine. I'm happy to be a part of anything that they want me to. But at the same time, it was like really nerve-wracking because I have never been in a parade, let alone seen a parade, and my only experiences with it are through television, and oh my goodness, I apologize quickly for this rapping. Like, if it's the worst rapping you've ever seen, like, please do not be surprised. This is totally Bailey standard. But yeah, back to parades. So earlier in the day, I think it's safe to say that a lot of people that I worked with thought it was going to be canceled, mostly because it was pouring down rain that day throughout the entire day, and it was forecasted to continue throughout the time of the parade, so we were just like, okay, logically it's probably not going to happen. But then we looked online and it said it was on rain or shine. So luckily I had brought a hat, gloves, a coat, an umbrella. So I was all set to go, and so was my sister, who I also work with, so fun. So the library closes. The parade doesn't start for another hour though, so we're just all hanging out in the lounge, and I'm just being super awkward as always, standing in the corner and just hoping for time to pass because I'm making a fool of myself as per usual. And then finally the parade happens, and it's still raining, and I'm walking just through lots of puddles to get to people. As one would assume, no one wants to stand out in the rain during a parade, so they were all standing under awnings. So I needed to pass out all this candy and get rid of it. So I kind of went back and forth between on the road and then going onto sidewalks to pass it to people. So I passed through a lot of puddles, unfortunately, and being the weak person I am, embarrassingly enough, I could not feel anything below my knees by the time I was done. So there was that. I started to get sick from that a little bit, but it was nothing too substantial. The exact next 2 days then would start exam week for me, which paired with the parade did me in. So I'm a very paranoid person when it comes to studying. So me being who I am, thought I need to pull some all-nighters to make sure I felt prepared enough for these, which was not in my best interest, it turns out, because the little bit of a cold I started to get because of the parade just came in full force. Then I became a walking, talking zombie. And then there was a family crisis, and I just didn't get any reading done, and I didn't update this vlog, and I feel so disappointed about that, and this is kind of a really hot mess. And I just really, really had high hopes that I could update this as I was reading, so this has become a fail. But that's okay, because we live and we learn and we try, and I'm still proud of it because it was my first one and it was something I completed, even if it wasn't to the standards I was hoping it would be. So I apologize if this was not that engaging, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to do a lot better, or at least be a little bit more interesting. During exam week, I didn't really get to read a lot. Up to it, I had made a substantial amount of progress, I think, in Bruja Born, but then I kind of put that on pause after exam week because Blue Exorcist Volume 20 came in at the library. I ended up rating it a 3.25, which I think is the lowest I've rated any volume in this series. But before I go into really why, I'll just give you a really quick synopsis of what the series is about. There are a lot of key players in Blue Exorcist, but when we're first introduced to the story, we really kind of focus on two main players, and these people are orphaned twins by the name of Yukio and Rin. Along the way, they are taken in by someone named Father Fujimoto, but they don't really know much about their true parentage. However, this kind of changes when Satan makes an appearance and kills Father Fujimoto. It's then revealed that Satan is the boy's father and that Rin has his powers. So this really acts as an entire catalyst in Rin's life. Rin takes it upon himself to decide that he is going to defeat Satan, even though he is like the most powerful individual in the demonic world, which is a path that no one really thought Rin would take. Everyone has all of these preconceived notions about who he is, what he's going to turn into because of who his father is and what he's inherited. So everyone thinks he's going to become this monster that needs to be killed. So there are all of these terrible preconceived notions that Rin begins to understand and have forced upon him. What I really love about this series is that Rin just completely turns these upside down on their heads. And he really proves that just because people think you're going to have a certain destiny, just because you have a certain parentage, that doesn't mean that you are to become your parents. That doesn't mean that you are going to fulfill everyone's worst nightmares. This series is a lot about just Rin's friendship with all these other people who he decides to go to Exorcist school with, and it also really looks a lot at just the demonic activity happening around the world at this time, which I think was a really fascinating aspect of the story. But to be honest, I don't love this series as much now as when I first started it. There's something about when it first began, just seeing Rin rise above all of these expectations like I previously mentioned, and learning what his powers entail, what he's capable of, growing in them, and just really making these long-lasting true powerful friendships. It was just really an amazing journey. And as the story progresses now, I see a lot more of a shift into looking at the past of his friends. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Some of his friends have really, really interesting backstories, but at the same time, I just don't think that they live up to Rin's story arc. And oh my goodness, that book didn't fit, so what do? I switch it out for one that does fit. Don't get me wrong though, I'm still extremely excited to continue with the series, and I plan on reading it until its completion as long as my libraries continue to get it. So fingers crossed on that. I just don't think it's as strong as when we first started out with it. This one I was really nervous for just because I have this feeling that Yukio, which is Rin's twin brother, is just, I think he's going to become more of a key player, and I just don't like Yukio. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's his personality, how he handles situations. I just think he's a really frustrating, unlikable character, and there's no way for me to really make any connection with him other than that he's like the nerdy twin, and I completely understand that. But at the same time, something about him just irks me, and I wish that that wasn't the case, especially because of what happened in this volume. So this particular one, volume 20, had two little types of things in it. One was a little Christmas story in the beginning, which I was thinking that it was going to be so exciting because it was going to get me in the Christmas spirit, but it was literally only one chapter. It was like so minuscule to the entire thing, and really was just practically like a side story. So I thought that was kind of really sad, but it was also really cute, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. I think that I'm really happy it was in there. I just wish that we got more. But anyway, the other part of it was a lot more about the twins' parentage. And I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just kind of gonna glaze over my thoughts in possibly a cryptic way. I feel pretty confident that the reason I didn't love this volume was because of the sheer amount of interest that was put into Yukio's character. He was such a focus point in it, and considering that he is my least favorite character in this entire series, it just didn't really do this volume any favors, unfortunately. All I can really say is that something really pivotal happened to him. He made this extremely important choice, and that just kind of ruined everything for me. For one, I don't think it really makes sense for his character. It felt very out of the blue. It felt very sudden. But also, if I really think about it, I could argue that all of this has been building since the Impure King arc, I think would be fair to say. The thing is, I read all of these throughout the time span that they've been released, which is both a kind of a good thing and a bad thing. One, it makes it so that I don't have a ton of volumes racking up, but at the same time, since they come out every so many few months, I think that I partially lose the emotional connection from volume to volume. It might be more practical to say that if I read them back to back, I would see a lot more of the interactions and remember a lot more of the interactions between the characters and just really feel for them more emotionally, but because that arc was so far back and everything I've been reading has taken so many years to finally get to this point, I think I've become detached, which really worked against me in this volume. But at the same time, like I said before, I just really don't see Yukio making that choice. I don't know if I've missed something along the way, or if I'm just cold to his character, which is really awful. I want to know where my animosity towards him comes from. Like, I'd like to know. Seriously. But that's just kind of where my whole lower rating with this volume came from. At the same time, I am ecstatic to continue on with this series, and I think the next volumes are just going to be really spectacular. I'm hoping that we get to see a lot more of Rin trying to reconnect with Yukio and just kind of see where he's at in his headspace. At the same time, I think they're going to go on this journey to really find out about their mother and really look at how each of them feels about the entire situation. On to Bruja Born. I ended up finishing this with a 3.75 rating. There are so many things I appreciated and fell in love with this novel, and I think it is superior to the first one. Both definitely have their strengths, but something about this one I really gravitated towards. For me, like I mentioned previously, I just enjoy so much more hearing from Lula's perspective and really getting to see her struggle and the message that comes across through this book because of her struggle. For one, I have to praise this book because of the amount of sisterly brotherly love and support that is in it. Even when they were angry and upset at each other, they still felt this love that really trumped all other emotions and consequences that had happened up to this point. And for me, I think that just really beautifully mirrored what sisterhood is all about. It doesn't matter the awful things that you did to each other, it doesn't matter the hurtful words that were said, it just matters that your blood and that underlying everything else, you have all the intentions to be this person, this pillar for them. And I just find that so inspiring and so beautiful and so uplifting, especially to have in a YA setting. I sincerely believe that the author did a phenomenal job setting up this really vibrant and powerful family dynamic that I haven't really seen that much of. Another element that I thought was just so well done, it was possibly my favorite part of the entire novel, is the message that Lula really ended up coming to in the very end of this. Up to this point, she had been through a lot. Like I mentioned, it was an emotional toll, a physical toll, and through that, she felt like she had been losing parts of herself. She had been physically scarred in the previous book and in this one. This had the opportunity to change her perception of herself. She was always described as a beautiful girl, and all the people noticed her beauty, complimented her on it, told her how powerful that truly made her and how beauty is power. Thus, as one can imagine, she put a lot of stock in her physical appearance, going to great lengths to make sure that people thought that she had maintained this despite what she was marred with. Throughout the rest of the book, as Lula deals with losing what she thinks is part of her beauty, we really get to delve into what beauty is other than just the physical aspects of it and what strength is and self-acceptance and self-love, especially in the face of hardships. And this is like a really natural progression throughout the book, which I think is what makes it stand out so much. Without a doubt, there are a great many YA and middle grade books even that really push these really important messages that I think are essential to have in our world today. However, I think sometimes it does it soapbox style. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, this is simply my perspective here. When someone already believes that message and they're reading that book, the soapbox type of style can really kind of throw you out of the story and be more of a preaching moment, one that really emphasizes what the author is trying to get across, and in a not so subtle manner perhaps, and therefore it can kind of detract from the storyline in that you're like, wow, this is more of a message rather than a natural flow to the story. I think sometimes we do need those types of messages, especially for people who unfortunately don't get these messages in their daily lives and may have this be a realization for them, or even an affirmation. However, sometimes reading books like this repeatedly can get a bit frustrating. What I really love about Bruja Born is that when we really kind of get to this message and the whole thing culminates, it's not like all of a sudden there. It's very much a natural progression that we get to see and that we get to realize with the characters. So much more organic. It's not a pause, here, let me tell you something that I think is really important for society to understand, for women to understand, people in general to understand. It's a continuation of the story integrated so seamlessly. And I think all of that's really notable. Moving on to a different topic, Nova. Oh my goodness, Nova, as I mentioned previously, is just my favorite character in this whole plot line. And as soon as he came on the scene, I was like, no words, no words. It all just became mush in my head. I love that boy so much. It was really interesting to see more of his history, and I was a bit confused as to his role. I could be completely wrong on this, but I think in the first book, I personally picked up possible romantic vibes, and that could just be because I've read this so long ago and I don't remember it accurately, but otherwise than that, just that role is no longer really the case, at least from my perception of the story, and his placement really moves into a different dynamic, but the dynamic that was introduced I really loved, and it was really heartwarming, and I was just so glad to see it, and I'm really excited to see what he does in the next book, especially because, oh my gosh, Bruja Born left on such a cliffhanger. It always happens in the past two books in the series. It ends on this note that you're like, oh my gosh, I need the next one, but I have to wait at least a year. Also, there was another guy introduced in this who I won't mention by name just because of potential spoilers, but he himself was introduced as a potential love interest, and let me just say, I approve. Now, the reason I took off a bit on my star rating is really kind of hard to describe. It's always just kind of like this feeling I have, and I can't really put it into words. I don't know if it just is because of the cyclical aspect of the book, and this is something that I also found to be true of the first book. And the first one, as I mentioned, it's really about really kind of finding the family in this really dangerous location. So it just kind of is moving through different areas of that location, encountering danger, overcoming the danger, and moving on. And I just kind of felt that was a tad bit similar in this book in the sense that something happens to Lula. She gets, I guess, for a lack of a way to explain it without getting too spoiler, she gets depleted, and so she has to kind of fix herself, and then the cycle begins again. And in each of these instances, in the first and the second book, these completely make sense to the plot line as to why these happen and why it continually happens. So I can't really fault it, but at the same time, I don't know why, but for some reason, I think it gets repetitive in some very small nature. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because like I said before, it absolutely makes sense to the plot line. All in all, though, I really do recommend the second book in the series, just because there are so many reasons as to why I enjoy it so much. There is the setting, the sisterly bonds, the amazing guys, especially Nova, and just the great backstories. I'm so excited to get into the mystery surrounding the father, and I just can't even begin to explain my excitement on that. And that's all I really have, guys, for this vlog. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry if this was not as entertaining as it could have been. I'm definitely going to try some different types of styles when I try and film and just see what kind of works best in these situations. But hopefully we'll get to grow together and go on this journey of finding what works well for my vlogs. I'm sorry that this is up now in February after my exams were completed 2 months ago, but that's such a Bailey thing to do. And we're back in the thick of things, but we're just gonna stay positive. I hope you all have a really great bookish day and that you treat yourself. I can't believe I said that.